Hello and welcome to Simplify Poker Academy. This is one of our small series on satellite play for Irish Open, and I suppose in conjunction with Paddy Power Poker now, Dara. But last week or last month we did an endgame satellite hand review with Dara, and that went down very very well. And we've had a few requests for early game strategy. Now, normally you would see Barry Carter, Mr. T-Boy himself here, but Barry's currently in a taxi on his way to an airport to head to Seville for some other company's events somewhere else, and asked me to step in and help Dara get through this. So what are we going to have a look at here, Dara?
Yeah, so we're doing something I've never actually done before, which is look at the early stages of satellites. I think this was an idea that you originally suggested, saying, well, it would be interesting to see how you play the early stages. The reason why I've never done it is really like I don't play the early stages of a satellite that much differently from a normal tournament. The only exceptions to that are if I make a really, really fast start and I get up towards, the amount of chips that are needed. The one thing that is a little bit different, I guess, about satellites, even at the start, is you should be playing a little bit more cautiously. Like, whatever number of seats there are, say there are 6 seats, you're essentially aiming to come sixth. You're not aiming to win the tournament. And what that means is you're maybe not as aggressive in certain spots. You're not taking as many risks. You're not taking as many high variance spots. But for the most part, you just kind of play the way what I would call your normal game, until you've reached a critical point, which is halfway towards the target. And for those who've read my books, you'll know what a target what the target stack is. But the idea is like you work out what the average number of chips will be when the seats go out, and that's what you're aiming for. So let's say 1 in 10 gets a seat in a satellite, then 10 starting stacks is what the average will be. So if you get to 5 or 6 starting stacks, suddenly now you're in a spot where you are trying to sort of maintain your stack more than add to it, and you're certainly taking less and less risks. And the way I always think about this in strategic terms is, let's say you have an opening range in your mind from every seat. Well, the further you get past that halfway point, the more hands you start to shave off from that opening range, so that you're just playing a stronger and stronger part of your range. Similarly, we're not going to go into endgame because that's something I've done to death, and go back and watch the last video if you want that. But nevertheless, relatively early in the satellite, you can get past this halfway point, and then it should start to dramatically affect your strategy. You're not looking to get a lot of chips in. You're looking to continue accumulating, maintain your stack, but not really sort of like take a big flip, for example. So that's what we're going to look at today. This is a satellite.
And it was just to say there, one of the reasons that we talked about doing this as well is, and it's been brought up by one of the comments there from Ed, is that what seen a lot of this year that I hadn't seen before is that when you win a lower level satellite that moves you into an upper level satellite, leveling up, like a $1 into a $15 or a $15 into $150, they dump you right into the next available satellite in some of those situations. So you're really starting with your 10,000 or 5,000 chips with 4 players and waiting for people to come in that are buying in directly. So it's really that kind of situation that this is valuable to players like myself who do that a lot.
Yeah, a very good comment from Edward. For those who are just tuning in and don't really know who we are or what we're doing, or maybe vaguely aware of me as a satellite guy, we have our own site, obviously Simplify Poker, and we have, as part of that, an academy where we put out one of these webinars every month, and 3 videos a month as well. But really the heart of it is we have a very, very good community of players there who, they're all serious recreationals, and Edward always makes great posts on the board, and has great questions and comments. So just something to bear in mind. That's just a shameless plug, obviously, but we will get into it. And yeah, it's completely true. Often the satellite qualifiers who come in from the feeders have to play from the start, so you need to know how to play at the early stages. So that's kind of what we're focusing on today.
We'll get the pimp out of the way and just say simplifypoker.com, and then just in the banner at the top, just click on Academy. You'll get all the details there. But that's not why we're here. Is to provide
That's not why
value.
we're here. We're here to give you some free stuff. And I had to go back quite a bit actually to find satellite I had read from the start, because I max lay reg everything nowadays.
Yeah.
The ones that are running on except the ones on stars, I have to say, sometimes I go into those earlier because they're re-entry as well. Um, but the ones on I play on Paddy, I always max layer reg because also the structure sort of encourages that because the add-on is bigger than the starting stack and the rebuy. So you essentially get, I think, 3.5 starting stacks for 2 buy-ins if you max layer reg. So I had to go back quite a bit to find this. So there's definitely some hands in here that I would play differently. I'm going to put a proviso on that. This was before I had done our recent multi-way course with Turlock McHugh. So some of the multi-way hands in particular, I kind of winced when I saw them looking back. Yeah, but this is 5 or 6 months old. Now you can see my screen. We're looking at my poker tracker. That's what we're going to use to replay. It is the start. You can see we literally all have 5,000 chips, very first hand. There are only 2 players at the table I really recognize. Ollie Boy is Ollie Boyce, who final table the Irish Open a few years ago. Very experienced player. Um, you can see that I have 322 hands on him. So I played quite a bit with him, probably all in satellites. His stats look good, balanced stats. VPIP 28%. That means he plays 28% of hands. He pre-flop raises 17%. He 3 bets 7%. C bet 71. These are all good balanced stats. And the other player who has very similar stats, no surprise, also reg an emotional fish, Kevin Hayes from Cork. He's 29, 16, 6, C bet of 73. So these are 2, good balanced players. Looking around the other players we see, I have less hands, so maybe less reliable sample sizes, but also fair to say some very different numbers. For example, this player here only has a 3 bet of 3%. So if they 3 bet, I'm going to pay at a lot more respect than if somebody with a higher 3 bet number 3 bets. What I'll do is I'll turn the HUD off for now just to clean up the screen a little bit, and I'll turn it on when it becomes important to the decision. Question from Tony: what's the transition point where early strategy gives way to late strategy? Yeah, that's a very good question. The point at which ICM starts to be really significant in a satellite is when roughly a third of the remaining field are getting seats. So typically that's when roughly a third of the field are left as well. At that stage, you start the ICM starts to ramp up, and the closer you get to the bubble, obviously, the more extreme that is. The more seats, the more that's a factor too. In a 2 or 3 seat satellite, the ICM late on is not as significant as in, say, a 30 seat mega satellite. So that's the kind of rule of thumb I use. When 1/3 of the remaining players are getting seats, you start to think seriously about ICM. Before that, if you get past the halfway point to the target stack, you also should be thinking about ICM. So very first hand I get dealt 9s under the gun. So I obviously open it for a min raise. Get called by this player who I think is recreational because I don't have very many hands on them. Kevin calls as well. Ollie calls on the button. So we're going 4-way to the flop. The 2 blinds fold. The flop comes King Jack 5. I make a very optimistic bet here. I definitely wouldn't do this nowadays with 3 players behind. But I think my thinking at the time was there's some chance nobody has a king here. They might even fold a jack. I clearly have the strongest range since nobody has 3 bet pre-flop. I think people might be surprised to see me do this, but I do tend to play the early stages pretty aggressively. So that's the reason for the bet. I get called and then Ollie raises. Once Ollie raises, obviously I'm done with the hand. So we can go to the next hand.
Is there any way you could change that to be big blinds instead of chip?
Oh yeah, I can of course.
Yeah.
There we go. Chips and big blinds. Yeah, the reason why I was showing it in is the target's about 50,000. So if we get past 25,000, that's the point where we should start. Thinking we have to tighten up.
Gotcha.
Next hand, I believe I'm Jack 6 in the big blind. Let's see if we end up playing this hand. Yeah, raise call. To be honest, these days I would probably squeeze a lot here. When the button raises and the small blind just calls, the button has a really wide range. This guy has probably not a very strong hand too because he would have 3 bet. And that's the one spot where I think he can be super, super wide. in your squeezes. It's a good way to sort of like build a stack early on, just pounce on these spots. But I didn't do it on this occasion. Flop checks around. On the turn, I'm now open ended. My strategy in general is if I have any equity in these spots when it's flopped around, when it's checked around on the flop, I will bet the turn. Because there's a very good chance this is what we called in the early webinar we did for the Academy members an orphan pot, where literally nobody has really much interest in the pot. And, if I get called, it's not the end of the world anyway, because I'm open-ended. So I did fire out a bet here, a small bet. And get called. And then on the river, we get a 10. Now, I'm at bottom of range, so I have just about the worst hand I can have. So it's definitely a spot we can think about bluffing. The other things we should be thinking about here are what are the hands we can get to fold. Now this is a very drawy board. He can obviously have a jack himself, and if he has a jack, it's probably better than our jack. And it would really suck to check and lose to a better jack, which he would just fold to this fairly chunky size 2/3. But there's also two flush draws there, and when there's two flush draws there, there's a decent chance he's also got a missed flush draw. So it's a good spot I think to bluff, and we do get it through. Question from Edward: did I read that right? That you made a 2x with nines under the gun? Yeah, to be honest, that's just, there's no great thought there, Edward. That's just kind of laziness. That's just me clicking the raise button in a spot where I probably have 12 other tables going. There's no, yeah. But in general, I do like to keep the stack to pot ratio as low as possible in the early stages. Sorry, as high as possible, because that allows you to exercise more edge post flop. But yeah, I mean, you could argue 2.5, 3x are all fine as well. 4-7 in the small blind. We are obviously just gonna. Sorry, we limp this one. We get a check behind. We flop a gut shot. This is another play we actually covered in the webinar we just did for Academy members called the limp stab. Because I've limped pre-flop and he's just checked back, we can rule out a lot of strong hands in his range, including an ace. So when the board comes ace high in particular, it's a very good spot to just throw out a bet. There's a good chance he's got absolutely nothing there. But we have a gut shot as well, or we can go 6-8 to make a straight 2. So our hand isn't completely useless. It has very little showdown, so we might as well start putting money in. Hope he folds. He doesn't. We get a 10 on the turn. To be honest, this is a spot that these days I would probably fire at another big bet, because I still have equity, but I can't really check call. But I think I can get everything other than an ace to fold if I say potted now on the turn. But in game I checked, and then I had to fold. So that's the spot where I think I should have bet the turn. 9-4 suited on the button. I would raise that these days. That might be just too many tables mistake.
Just to say, this isn't a tournament from 2011. This is when you say these days.
2011. It's maybe like.
No, it's 2024. It was December 2024. I know that for a fact. I looked it up.
Oh, December 2024. Wow, it's that long ago. Okay, yeah. Didn't realize it was that old. Yeah, I'm a very, very different player these days.
But the point being that you've done a lot of multi-way study since then.
Yeah, didn't really have much of a clue what I was doing multi-way back then. Ollie opens. Ollie's obviously a very aggro player. King Jack suited. We're not the button. If we're on the button, it's a much more appealing call. But this race is kind of like trying to buy the button. Force the button to fold. If the blinds come along, that's fine. It's a hand that plays well multi-way, but we would like to play it in position. So yeah, three bet this. We're also so deep that even if we 4 bets, we can think about 3 betting unless he makes it really big. Ollie calls. Interesting flop because we have stuff here. We've 2 overs. We've a backdoor flush draw. We've an immediate gut shot. Ollie leads. This is fair to say a better board for him than us. We probably don't 3-bet hands like 9s, 8s, and 7s. We might have Jack 10 suited some of the time, but yeah, we don't really have too much very strong stuff here. So Ollie, recognizing it's his board, leads at it. We have too much equity, but it's not our board. This hand is this hand isn't strong enough to raise for value, and it's too strong to raise as a bluff. So I just call. 6 on the turn, which, even worse for our range now. He has a lot of 10x. He bets half pot. This is a little bit dicey. I think these days I would probably just give up, fold, but I'd make the call. And then on the river, he bets. Yeah, I think I should have folded turn there. If I hit any of my overcards or a heart, I could have continued. But I get literally one of the worst cards in the deck, and I still call, so that wasn't great. Jack 10, we're going to open. Good board for our range. Obviously, the king and the queen favor us very heavily, and our hand actually has a lot of equity. So I go for a fairly big bet, which is what I would probably do with most of my value in this board, and get the fold. 7-5 suited. Sometimes I would open that. I decided not to on this occasion. King Jack suited. This one I will open. Big blind defense. We flop top pair and some back doors. Again, good board for us. Yeah, this is an interesting overbet here, but the board is so draw heavy. There's so many double gutters, open enders, and it's a board which favors us very heavily. There's a lot of turn cards I'm not really going to love. Any card essentially between a king and a 7. So, queen, jack, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So we're front loading here. We bet bigger than pot, and we get to fold. 10-8 suited, face of 3x. We can obviously defend this. Good board for our range and our hand. These days I think I might lead this sometime, but I don't think I played very many leads back then. It goes check, check. He recognizes it's not his board. We talked about before about how my strategy in these spots when the turn checks through is to, with any equity, when the flop checks through, is to bet the turn. That's what I do here. Now I should definitely fire the river. I don't know what I actually did here, but he has a lot of hands which call 1 street but don't call 2 streets. So it should be a 2 street plan. And yeah, thankfully even back then I did that. So I go for a big bet and get to fold. In those spots where you get a good board and your opponent doesn't bet, and you therefore decide to bet the turn, you should pretty much always fire the river unless the river is really good for his range, because they will have so many hands that can call 1 bet but can't call 2 bets. Yeah. Kevin opens, Ollie calls. Don't think I want to get involved with 10-9 off 3-way. Yeah, so you don't. I know people say pot odds and all that stuff. We only need to win 21% of the time, but we're going to be out of position to probably the 2 best players on the table. So we don't really want to create problems for ourselves. Next time we get aces on the button, so we obviously open. We love this when it happens. The big 3 bet. We go for the 4 bet. Recreational players, when they 3-bet, they don't really 3-bet fold too much, so you don't really need to level yourself, I don't think, and play too trappy. You just try and get as much money in as you can pre-flop, and we get it all in as it happens. And the ace 4 suited. So this is one of the benefits for playing early on. People do kind of go crazy in the early stages. Now you may have noticed I've played a lot of hands so far, and sometimes recreational players in particular overreact to that. They think, oh well, this guy's just opening everything, and it's a good spot. You can get them to spew off when you have aces.
But your frequency of hands is relevant to the number of big blinds you have at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The deeper, the more hands we can play, basically. So, yeah, that's why I said, for example, even the 7-5 suited, I would open it sometimes. And again, the 6-3 suited, I would open sometimes, but because this guy might be a little bit on tilt now, having lost the big pot. So I could expect him to 3-bet me a lot more again. And it's Kevin's big blind as well. Kevin is obviously going to play well from the big blind, and we have Aidan Redden, who's arrived at the table in the small blind. So yeah, long way of saying that's a hand I would sometimes open, but not in that spot. 7-4, we're not going to play that. 5-9, we're not going to play that. 8-7 suited. We do open this one. And we get a flash, a flash, a flash. Yeah, this happens a lot in these. This happens even still today. You get a lot of pots which are multi-way. Like when you look at solvers, these players behind it generally not supposed to flash. They're supposed to just 3-bet or fold. But in practice, these online satellites to live events play more like live tournaments where people do flat more. So a hand like 8-7 suited, which like doesn't mind the more the merrier kind of thing, they become better opens. Obviously, we just missed this in glorious style. Good for our range, but we have 4 players. Would be very optimistic to bet here, so we just give up. 5-7, going to fold that one. King 3 in the big blind. Face a min raise. We do defend. Fairly late position min raise, so this can be fairly wide range. Flop a bad bottom pair. Goes check check. Turns an ace. I said I normally bet in these spots, but when I have a hand like this, which is kind of like, there's not much point in betting this hand. Also, the ace is a bad card for us, obviously, because he has a lot of ace X. So I'm just going to check and see what he does here. He does check back. And now I just decide to try and win a showdown without putting any more money in. And I do. He definitely missed a bet on the turn. If he bets the turn, I'd probably just fold.
Yeah.
But again, in these types of satellites, like that's a spot where if I'm playing against more experienced players, I just never win that hand. But in this type of field, in this type of tournament, you actually will win those hands more often than you should. So you can actually defend wider, play more hands pre-flop as well. Even though, as I said, like the default strategy is to actually play tighter because it's a satellite. But as against that, you are dealing with a soft field. Nibbler opens the button. This is a hand you can obviously go 2 ways with. It plays fine as a flat or a 3-bet. I decided to 3-bet on this occasion. Get the fold. 2-3, we're going to just fold. 10-2 suited. I would open this in somewhere else, but not on this occasion. With 2 experienced players in the blinds, I'm going to be playing closer to normal ranges, and not getting out of the line as much. 4-2 pocket twos. Pocket twos again. Yeah, it's early position. It's just the wrong type of hand. I would open it sometimes though. I don't mind the open either. 4-3. No. Next hand we're big blind and we've ace king. Or no, I guess somebody busts, so we're ace king. Flat call. When there's an open and a flat, you want to do very little flatting. You mostly want to 3-bet because if you even get in one player to fold, that's a pretty big result. You kind of double your chances of winning the pot. And you don't want to play out of position to 2 players. When you're out of position to 2 players without the betting lead, you're absolutely going to have to make the best hand to win the pot. So we 3-bet. To be honest, I think I should have gone a bigger size. The second player calls. That's always the best result because the second player kind of has a capped range. The first player can obviously have all the super strong hands like aces, kings, all that stuff, but the second player rarely has those hands because they would have 3-bet them. So, obviously the best result is when everybody just folds, I guess, but second best result is when the opener folds and the second player calls. Get a very bad flop though, and I decided not to be too ambitious here. Again, like I have showdown here, so I don't need to bet. I said, like in earlier hands we saw me betting the turn when the flop checks true, but with this type of hand I don't really need to do that. I can just win unimproved at showdown, which again is exactly what happens. Like in tougher fields, players would put pressure on with this gut shot. They need to bet the flop or the turn, and then follow through on the river with the bluff. But in these satellites, for some reason, people just don't. They don't take those spots as often as they should. Queen 7, we're going to fold that one. 6-3, going to fold King 9. This would be a very ambitious open, yeah. I didn't open it. Queen 10 off is a better hand, but we're very early. I did decide to open it this one though. Okay, so this is a spot where these days I would always bet one big blind. Because there's a decent chance they both whiffed and they're just going to give up. And I obviously have a lot of King X. On paired boards, it really, it's crucial what the paired card is. Like there's a big difference between King 3-3 and King 3-3. On King 3-3, I'm not going to have the 3 very often. But on King 3, I will have the King quite a lot. And obviously I'm blocking some kings as well with the Queen and the 10. So I think I should have bet here. But I did check. Now I'm just trying to get the showdown and somehow be good, but you know, Ollie doesn't let me do that. So yeah, I should have bet her on the flop there. 4-5 suited. Yeah, I would open this quite a lot of the time. I didn't on this occasion. Ace 10. Okay, we would have obviously defended this, but facing the 3-bet. No, now even though I fold, I want to talk a little bit about this spot. This is a big difference. This is a spot which is very different, I think, in this type of tournament and say a tough online reg-infested tournament. In a tough online reg-infested tournament, this 3-betting range will be quite polarized. It'll be some very strong hands and some very weak hands. And we should absolutely have a fairly healthy cold 4-betting range that includes our very strong hands and then also includes stuff like King 10 suited, King Jack suited, those types of hands. But in a satellite like this, in my experience, early position open and the button 3-bets, this is always a very strong range. The players just don't have the weak stuff that they should have. Now this player, on the other hand, does have a really high 3-bet percentage, which I hadn't actually seen at this stage, I don't think. So that maybe changes my opinion when it comes later on. And we can actually see when I click on the notes here, if you can see the screen, Poker Tracker has taken some automatic notes on this player, and they noticed that they 3-bet not all in on 3 occasions. They had Ace Queen suited, legitimate hand, Ace King off, legitimate hand, 10-9 suited, not so much. So the likelihood is this player just 3-bets their opening range or something close to it. So if I picked up on that at the time, I would actually have liked a 4-bet here. We could make it like 18 big blinds, and I think he's going to have to fold all the 10-9 suited stuff, and we'll win the pot a lot. But, you know, missed opportunity. Okay. You can see this player is playing super wide, obviously. This is the kind of hand we could turn. We can call or turn into a light 3-bet, which is what I did on this occasion. Doesn't play a great multi-way, and you know, so if we call here and the 2 blinds come in, that's a really bad spot for us. So on this, I definitely prefer the 3-bet here. This is this is a good spot to check back. Our hand doesn't really benefit from protection. It's hard to imagine too many worse hands calling when we bet. And the 7 is the crucial card. If you remember on the King 3 board, I said there's a big difference between King 3 and King 3-3. There's a big difference between Ace 7 and Ace 7-7. I have very little 7x in my 3-betting range, so I should just play this more cautiously. They check the turn. Now I think I can start going for value against pairs. You know, any pair basically will call at least 1-bet, but he just folds. This is a good spot to potentially go for a light 3-bet. We have a loose opener, Ollie, and this player is very, very loose as well. I think I didn't go for it on this occasion, but that is a spot we could have taken if we'd maybe been paying more attention. Jack 2, not going to open that. Ace 6 suited should definitely be opened. Yeah, it does get opened. Both blinds call. Yeah, now this is an interesting spot because, again, paired board, look at what the paired card is and ask yourself how often you have that compared to your opponents. We probably have a lot of less 5x than both of these players. So that gives us an argument for checking back, which is what I decided to do. We're going to hate getting check raised here with this hand. An additional benefit of the check back is sometimes when we check back, either of these two players can go, okay, well he's missed now, and I'll just bluff the turn. We have the type of hand that can fairly comfortably call at least one bet. We also have different ways to improve. We can go runner flush, or we can obviously hit a six for the effective nuts. So those are all good reasons to check, I think. We improved to two pair on the turn. And now this is definitely a spot where we want to bet, because they can obviously have the ace, but we're beating all the ace X apart from ace five, because we have the best two pair. We can also get called by stuff like 7-8, straight draws, any one heart hand as well can call us. So there's a lot of stuff we can target for value at this stage now. Ollie calls, river's a 10, Ollie checks. Now the question is, do we go for thin value or not? These days I would. At the time I think I was a little bit scared, so I didn't. But we can get called by all the ace X. And we obviously won the hand because our stack is bigger. Don't know what Ollie had.
I have it here if you want to know.
Yeah, good question from, or good comment from Edward again. Ace6 hand is super interesting because your hand also needs protection, but the big blind has more 5x. Yeah, that's it. Like, you're kind of pulled in two directions. If you're just thinking about your hand, you kind of want to bet because you benefit from protection. But then you're thinking about your range and you're thinking, shit, I don't have too much 5x. And certainly a player as good as Ollie is capable of recognizing that and maybe putting you in the blender with a check raise. So it's kind of nice to be able to just check and see what happens on the turn. And we open ace king, obviously. Ollie flats the button. Big blind flats as well. Yeah, no idea what I did here. Yeah, checking is fairly standard here. Again, like, this is a recurring theme now, but paired board, how much fives do we really have? Not very many compared, particularly to the big blind. So just check and see what happens. Ollie checks back. We pick up. We still have two overs, and now we have a gut shot as well. This is a spot where I decided a small bet could kind of work on a bunch of different levels. It might prevent Ollie from putting in a big bet. Obviously we have equity against calls. Even if they have a pair, we can probably hit an ace or a king or a queen to be good. And if they've just missed, if they just have a random, like, I don't know, 8-7 and king 4, it's still actually a good result if they both fold. So small bet kind of makes sense here. The big blind is the one who calls. We hit the king on the river. He checks again. Definitely going for value now. We're hoping that he has a jack or a 10. But he just folds. 8-4. Definitely don't. I wouldn't have defended that even if the 3-bet hadn't come in. It's just a horrible hand multi-way. 4-5 is going to be. That's small blind, is it? Yeah. Okay, once the open comes in, we've lost interest in the hand. 10-6, we're not going to open on the button. 10-5, 8-4, 8-9. I could open this sometimes. Didn't on this occasion. The stacks, by the way, are getting noticeably shallower behind, so that's going to tighten up our opening range, and see hands like 8-7 off just drop out of it. Again, same setup. Early position open 3-bet, and we have an ace, but our ace is a lot worse this time. But I kind of wish I'd taken the spot earlier with ace 10.
I have noticed that Ollie Boy has been replaced by somebody who's a very different player to Ollie Boy.
Yeah, my good friend Jason Tompkins is now in Ollie's old seat, but that's obviously not great for me.
No.
So we're not going to defend the 7-5 off against blah. Probably would have opened this if it came around, but not opening it now. Should be opening the king 5 suited. We could even have maybe thought about this as a light 3-bet some of the time, depending on this guy's opening frequency and fold to 3-bet frequency. Maybe we can look at those quickly, actually, even though nothing happened in this hand, just to talk about how I use those stats in game. Now, I don't have very many hands on this guy, so it's not going to be particularly useful. But you can see he has a healthy opening, 20% in early position. That's kind of suggesting there's a couple of hands in there who maybe can't call a 3-bet. And he has a fold to 3-bet of 67% and a 4-bet of 0. Now, these are small samples, so I'm not really advocating using a sample size this small, but I am saying that, like, if you have a bigger sample and you have these kind of numbers, this would be a very good spot for a light 3-bet. But obviously, we don't do anything in this hand. Queen 6 we're not going to play, Jack 7 we're not going to play, and then we pick up pocket 10s. Obviously we're opening this one. Loose player defends the big blind. Yeah, again, like, so many paired boards here, but the queen is a very good card for us. We have lots and lots of queen X, so we should just go ahead and bet. And they fold.
Would you do anything different there if it was queen 5-5 rather than 5 queen queen?
Yeah, if it's queen 5-5, I'd probably check back, to be honest. Unless it was a very, very honest recreational player who never check raises a bluff. We fold the 7-4, 10-9 suited. Early position. Again, this player just loves 3-betting the button. Still didn't pick up on it, though. Yeah, I should definitely have been thinking about some light 4-bets there. Jason opens, so we're not going to play queen 4. I'm not going to play 10-6. 4-2 suit on the button, probably not going to play that either. Nope. Queen 2, no. Jack 10 off, maybe. Into Jason's big blind, which is not ideal, but good board for us, for both for our range and our hand. So no reason not to bet here. We bet, Jason calls. Now we're kind of at the middle of our range. Like our hand isn't strong enough to bet again and get called by too many worse hands, but it's not so weak that we want to really bluff with it. So we're just going to check here. A lot of good stuff can happen. We can obviously hit the river. And we get to see the river. We don't have to think about a check raise. Jason checks the river, which is quite a relief. We have no reason again to bet. It's hard to imagine too many worse hands calling. And he had queen 4 on the flop. He's got a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. This is actually I know Jason's game pretty well. Obviously, this is the type of hand which actually very might well turn itself into a check raise bluff on the turn, because on the flop he has quite a lot of stuff. So he can just check call, but on the turn he really just has a gut shot. So if I bet again, he could actually choose this as this is a reasonable bluff candidate. So when you're playing against that type of player, you want to check these hands back more if you don't want to invite the bluff. Jack 5, we're just going to fold. 8-7 under the gun is going to be a fold. Jack 5 suited. Should be defended. Bad board. His size is quite big as well. So we just give up. 4-2. We might have limped that one if it had come, but didn't. King 8 on the button we're going to raise. Just take it. King 8 suited. I really should have started 3-betting this player. They're opening far too wide. If we turn the HUD stats on quickly, their VPIP is just off the charts, like 51, 31, and the 3-bet is 24. You do run into these type of players still in these satellites to live events. You don't tend to see them too much in regular tournaments and sites anymore, because it's not a winning style. In fact, it's a style which will sort of burn through deposits very quickly. So they don't tend to last too long. But in satellites, you see more varied styles. Ace jack. We should be three betting this, I think. Yeah. This player, I'm going to look at their HUD stats. I have a hunch. Yeah, their fold to three bet is really high, 70%. This is not a spot where I would always three bet somebody off 30 big blinds, but definitely in game I would have checked on these HUD stats and looked and gone, look, they're folding 70% of the time to three bets. So this is a very good spot to three bet. Oh, missed what happened. This time they do call. Again, like, because they're folding so much to three bets, their calling range is much stronger than normal. So I think they'll actually have more strong hands on this than the average player will have. So Ace Jack doesn't feel like a hand that can bet three streets and get called by worse hands too much. So I decided to take a street out on the flop. On the turn, I turn a flush draw, and again, kind of for the same reason. I'm thinking if he has a king, I'm probably just getting one street at most. If he has a worse ace, I'm probably getting just one street at most. And the street he's most likely to call is the river. Sometimes he'll bluff as well, which is maybe what happened. Yeah, he had ace five. I think, to be honest, we were probably making about that amount of money anyway. But yeah, the rationale for taking it was we on the flop we had maybe a two street hand, which turned into a one street hand on the turn. Nice, three off under the gun, not going to be opened. 5-2 suited should be defended here, but there's a shove, so we fold. New table. Killian O'Brien, I know. I don't think Fintan Gavin is Fintan Gavin, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I'm pretty certain it's not.
Yeah, yeah, it's Smurf is obviously Colette. And I think 77 Batman is Peter Cahill, maybe. Yeah, he's a guy who beat me heads up in Killarney once in the Grand Prix, so I know him quite well as well. Yeah, so been moved to a new table. Let's turn the HUD stats on and see what we can glean from those. I do recognize this name, even though this is probably Shane Kelly actually. Now that I think about it, these look like Shane Kelly stats. Smurf, obviously. Yeah, whoever Fintan Gavin is does have Fintan Gavin-esque stats of being very wide, but might just be a Fintan Gavin fan. This is a recreational, I don't have very many hands on, and they seem quite unbalanced. Batman has loose stats. I've got 1k on him, but he's, reasonably balanced. So let's see what happens. We start off with Queen 3 suited, and we defend. And terrible board for us, so we just check fold. I'm just going to check how many chips I have. Yeah, I've doubled up effectively since the start, but I'm still, I still have to play relatively normal. Even though I made a good start, I haven't got past that halfway point I talked about earlier. Open from Batman, don't want to defend the Queen 9 off in the small blind, don't want to play the Queen 3.
You've changed table again, by the looks of it.
Again, yeah, so the tables are breaking fairly quickly at this stage. I have to say I don't recognize too many of these players.
One to your left, McDevitt. That's James McDevitt. He's quite a very regular.
Yeah, you can actually see I've got 3k hands on him, so I played a lot against him, and he has
a lot of satellites out of James.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe the c-bet number is a little bit too high, but yeah, nothing really stands out as too egregious. The other players, I do recognize this name as well, even though I don't know who it is, and they have very good, very balanced stats. So almost certainly a rake. Have a decent number of hands, and this player too, who seems more aggro than optimal, let's say. So let's continue. So I'm not going to open Queen 3. Got 6-4 in the big blind. Facing a min raise, we should obviously defend this. Got a terrible board, so it's just going to be check fold. Ace 5 in the small blind. Decided to raise. James is a good aggro player, but we don't mind when that happens either. It's never a bad outcome to win with a bad ace out of position.
Just a question there on your sizing. Four bigs. Is that based on who you're playing against, or
Partly, and
Okay.
also his stack size.
Yeah.
If I go much smaller than that, he can call super wide, and use position. But I'm making him put in almost 10% of his stack, and that's the point at which you should start doing a lot of folding. I
Just
know
when I first saw that happen there, I was thinking maybe three bigs, but I
yeah,
understand what
I
you
think
mean.
he'll call super wide three bigs, and then I'm just giving
Yeah,
myself a lot of problems. You generally don't want to be playing out of position to the better players.
yeah.
Recognize this name from back in the day. I don't see them around very much anymore. I don't know who it is. Clive D. 10-2, not going to play that. 10-7, not going to play that. 4-2, no. Queen 10 off. This would be a loose open, but yeah, I didn't take it. King 5, big blind. Should be defending against a min raise. When two players call, I don't think I should call here. You can see this is before I studied multi-way. These days I would just fold this hand now. And yeah, you end up having to fold the flop. But like that's a spot where even if you hit, like it's not going to be a good thing. A hand like that, when you're up against two players, you're twice as likely to be dominated. So
Yeah.
you want to stay away from those easily dominated hands. Absolute
What's
trash
your bottom
here.
of range for calling there, though? If you're in
King.
the big blind and you have two players like that, what are you looking to do?
I'll call King 10 off, probably not King 9 off these days. And to be honest, I'll probably call all the suited kings because I'm not trying to flop a pair there. So I'll call fairly wide suited stuff, all the suited high card hands, and then stuff like 5-3 suited, 6-4 suited. That's all fine as well. But you really want to stay away from the offsuit, easily dominated stuff.
So you're playing it like a light three bet because you know when the flop comes, you know whether or not you're continuing with the hand fairly quickly,
Yeah,
and you're happy to fold a lot of hands.
yeah, exactly. Ace 7, we should obviously open this. Two callers. Nine's a good card for us because we are opening all the 9x on the button. So again, on the paired board, I'd like to see me trying out a bet here. I might not have done it though. Yeah, I think back then I used to play my hand a little bit more than my range. These days, I would like to see a bet. And now this happens, and we have to fold. A lot of auto folds. Queens. Okay. I marked this hand before we started because this was roughly the halfway point in the satellite. So this was the point I wanted to get up to before ICM started to be significant. Okay, so we're facing a limp from this player. Obviously, queens has to be raised for value. Again, kind of a function of stack depth more than anything else. Actually, this is a little bit greedy. I'm going to look at their stats quickly. Oh yeah, okay. This is pure recreational. I only have 44 hands on them. There's a huge gap between their VPIP of 32 and their PFR of 9. What that means in practice is this player likes seeing flops, but they're not very aggressive. So when you have a strong hand yourself, you want to push in as much money as you think they might call, because they're not going to put the money in for you. So we raise to 4 big blinds, and we do get called. Often these players have little or no limp fold range, so long as unless you go really big. If you start to go 6 or 7, you start to see some folding. But you can kind of get away with anything up to 4, and they'll just auto call. Yeah, okay. Obviously, the old thing of when I have queens and ace always comes. We don't like that. But how much ace x do they really have in their limping range? Probably none. Or well, maybe not none, but not very much. So we can't be too worried about the ace. Small bet will clear out all the hands that, and we can get called by worse hands as well when we bet this small, but they just fold. This is a question which actually comes up time and time again. Like, what do you do with queens or kings when an ace comes? And the answer is you just kind of pretend you have the ace. You forget about the fact that you have the queen or the queens or kings. If you have more ace x in your range than they have, just go ahead and bet. The fact that you have queens or kings doesn't really matter. It's a mistake to check in those spots and just kind of cap your range. So I'm not going to do too many more hands because, as I said, we're gone to the halfway point now. I'll do a few more hands and then I'll open it up to final questions. So if you have any questions, think about them in the next 5 minutes, because that's when I will be answering them. A hand like this should never be played. 4-5 off, multi-way. 10-9 suited. Should definitely be opened. You'll notice there's not a lot of three betting, and that's kind of still true to this day in these types of satellites, particularly for the Irish Open. You just don't. You see a little bit more these days, but not. You still nothing like as much as you should. And what that means in practice is you can get away with opening wider, particularly hands like this that flop well. Now, 10-9 suited from this seat obviously isn't open, but to be honest, like in early position, I would open 8-7 suited at a table like this. Yeah, that's why I'm not in the satellite now, Matt, but I will be there soon. Don't worry. I'm still hoping to get to 32, one for every county. I'm on 28 currently. It's looking a little bit forlorn now because I won't be able to play the next 5 or 6 days when I'm in Seville, but still a few satellites. You never know, we might get there. So the small blind calls. Small blind obviously has a much stronger range in theory than the big blind. The 8-4-4 board, again, the paired board. Are we going to have too many 4x? Probably not. So not really a board we want to bet, I think. We could get check raised quite a lot here.
There's a lot of turns that can come to make it, yeah.
Yeah, and then when this happens, that's nice, obviously. No reason to raise here. If he's betting an 8, we want him to encourage him to think that his 8 is still good. If he's betting a 4, we want to put as little money into the pot as possible. And if he's bluffing, we want him to keep bluffing. So all good reasons to just call rather than raise. And we're still beating a lot of stuff here. We're still beating an 8. Beating some worse 10x, beating some pocket pairs. So we're definitely not folding to this size. I don't think our hand is strong enough to raise, though. And yeah, he was betting an 8. King 6 off is too early. Ace 7 in the big blind. Raise from this player. Yes, Ed. First world problems, I think. Yeah, so
I have to put that on the screen.
this is a player who I would normally. This is a spot where I would 3-bet a lot. But again, we looked at this guy's stats before. He has a very low pre-flop raise, so you have to give his raise a bit more respect than normal. He loves to limp, but his raising range is actually quite tight. So that's why we opt for just call here. Like, this is not a hand we would be happy to 3-bet call. If we 3-bet and he shoves, we're probably going to have to cry and fold. So we flop bottom pair. He comes with half pot. Spoken before in academy videos. This size, when you see it from live players, and I'm thinking of this as a live tournament because it's a satellite to a live event, and probably most of these players are live players. This size is often the bluff size, half pot. And I think the reason for that is they don't want to bet small because they think, well, he'll just call, but they don't want to bet big either because they think, well, I'm bluffing, so I don't want to put too much chips in the pot. So kind of this half pot size is the compromise. So I assume I called here. Yeah, I do call. However, he does size up on the turn, and now this is a more serious bet size. Again, we looked at this player's pre-flop stats. If we look at their post-flop stats, incredibly low aggression frequency, 11%. So actually, if I had checked this in game, which I'm pretty sure I didn't, I might have even just folded the flop, even though it was just a half pot bet, because they're This is presumably is actually the first time they bet on the flop. So let me. Yeah. So obviously I fold now. Okay, I'm going to do one more hand where I play it through, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. Could conceivably have played. No, don't think so. King Queen. Surely played this one. Okay, well, raise and take it. That doesn't count. Big blind spot. This might be interesting. Well, short stack shoves, so no, not that interesting. 9-3 in the small blind. Limp, yeah. We're going to be raising a lot into McDevitt because, he's a good aggro player. So when we have a good strong hand, we want to give him the chance to 3-bet. And we also want to do some bluffing as well. This hand is too strong to bluff, though. It just flops very nicely. We want our bluffs to be stuff like 9-2 offsuit. He checks behind. Against a weaker player, I would definitely limp stab, but McDevitt is, I think, protected in these spots. And we end up chopping. So, yeah, not particularly interesting, but... yeah, so that's kind of, now we're getting on towards the end game, and my style is going to change a lot, and the stacks are going to be shorter as well, so you're going to see more shoving. If you're interested in that stuff, go back and watch our last free video. Comment from Edward: pretty interesting that you're more aggro than I expected in early stages. Is this a product of being a satellite or purely stack depth? To be honest, it's mostly down to the field. As I said, like, players are not 3-betting me enough when I open, so I'm opening much wider. Players are allowing me to realize more equity post-flop than I should, so I'm continuing wider when I get 3-bet. And I'm also defending more from the blinds and continuing more against at least flop C-bets. Yeah, it's really down to just, like, live satellites are probably the softest. Satellites to live events are probably the softest online tournaments right now, because you have a lot of inexperienced live players who are playing them, who are not really online players. And all the stuff that you can do against those players in live events, you can also do in these. Even more so, to be honest, because for some reason people just play more straightforward, I think, online. Question from Jibs: right now in this stage, what mistakes do you think most players are making that you're actively exploiting? Ooh, that's a good question. Some players are opening too wide. I think you saw me doing a lot of 3-betting, so I was kind of taking my own advice of, like, players are not 3-betting enough, and I was 3-betting a lot more than I normally would against players who I think are opening too wide and are not defending their 3-bets enough. In particular, not 4-betting. Like, I don't mind if they call the 3-bet because I get to play the position, but if they 4-bet, that's going to be a bit of a no-no for me. I'll be more careful. But there's a lot of players who open too wide and who either fold far too much to the 3-bet. Or they call, but then they just check fold the flop when they miss. So that's probably the big one, to be honest. Just 3-betting more. Opening wider as well when you're not getting 3-bet yourself.
You one there from Rob. You open King Queen off in early position. What's the bottom of your opening range there, given that the 11, 6, and 6 big blind stacks around the blinds?
Probably King Jack off. And again, that's very much a function of, I think, just players are not 3-betting enough. Like, if this is a tough online tournament, then I'm going to be much more careful. But in these types of tournaments, yeah, I definitely do take the piss.
I'll tell you what, we've the target stack question, but let's leave that till a bit later. And we get to Matt, because there's a lot of stuff there to say.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is just like your percentage of winning a season, your percentage of the target stack. That determines your ICM. How do you just versus players who will defend too wide? So long as they're not 3-betting, I'll open super wide against them. Sometimes I'll size up with my stronger hands if I think they're not paying attention. those are the two big ones I can think of. I will see bet more often, obviously, because their range is too wide. Um, yeah, I guess those are the three big exploits. Uh, yeah, like I've repeated this a few times, but really, how often you're getting three bet is the big determinant on your strategy. Like when you're at a table where people are rarely three betting you, you can really get away with opening super wide, and that's to your advantage if you feel that you have a post flop edge as well. The more hands you get to play, the better, even in a satellite. And I think I've surprised a lot of people with how loose I played this, but to be honest, I still play very much the same way in softer fields. And if you watch me play a satellite on Paddy Power, and a satellite on Stars, essentially it's two different players. Because on Stars I'm playing against a lot more really good regs like Jack Hardcastle, Dave Doherty, uh, Jabracada, Robbie Bull. So there'll be a lot more good regs who will three bet me, and if I can't really get out of line as much there. Um, More late tournament when shoving. Oh, okay. This is a question.
I'd say that's in relation to the defending why too many players are defending
Yeah.
too
If
wide.
okay, so if they're going to call my shoves too wide, I'm going to tighten up my shoving range, because you really don't want to get called in most spots later on, even when you have a relatively good hand. Yeah. So I just like seriously tighten my shoving range. In fact, I've said this before in satellite content, but it bears repeating. The only note I really take on people on satellites is calls too wide, and I generally yellow tag those players so that I can see at a glance whether one of those players is lurking behind, and if they are, that's going to cause me to tighten up my shoving range later on. And similarly, if I'm checking the lobby, let's say near the button, sorry, near the bubble, and there's a lot of those players I have tagged in the lobby with the yellow tag. That tells me
Yeah.
that even if they're on other tables, they're going to be calling off too wide. So I don't expect the bubble to go on very long. But if I open it on, say it's on Stars, and I see a bunch of red tags, that's my good regs thing. So if I see a lot of reds and not yellows, I'll think, oh, this bubble could go on for a long time. So I'm going to have to keep taking my shove spots. But if I open the lobby and I see a lot of yellow tags indicating players who call too wide on other tables, I'll think, okay, this bubble probably won't go too last, so I don't go too long, so I don't need to take as many risky shoves.
We've done two of these webinars leading up to the Irish Open now, because it's satellite silly season. But we the last video we did, which anyone that hasn't seen it, please do go and watch it because it's on Final Table, the ICM bubble, and it's an incredible 1.5 hour video. The Look, after these two videos, I mean, what would you say is the most important things that you're currently seeing in the satellite scene that people should avoid or should do? Both to maximize their chances of winning a satellite package at the moment against the field.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, since the theme of this is early play, I'm going to think primarily about the early stages, what I see people doing or not doing. And I think, okay, this is an old satellite, so there are certain hands I would play differently now, because I knew less back then, when this happened. But I think my macro strategy was very good. I think I was opening roughly around the right percentage of hands. I think I was three betting roughly around percentage of hands. I think all of those things. So I think I had a very good overall macro strategy, and I did very well back in satellites in this time, and I think that was largely down to that, opening the right amount of hands, three betting the right amount of hands. I think the vast majority of players don't do that. They're either too tight or too loose. We saw somebody who was opening 60% of hands and or playing 60% of hands, raising 30% and three betting 25%. You can't get away with that in any field. So don't do that. And I still see that. I still see players who are far too loose in the early stages. And then I see players who are just too tight. They're just playing like normal circumspect ranges, and that's okay in a tough reggy tournament. But these are not tough reggy tournaments. You should be looking to step out of line. So don't stick to your standard ranges either. And when you see a player like I hesitate to say this, but when you see a player like me who is opening too wide, start three betting, because it's such an easy exploit, and there's really nothing I can do against it when it happens, other than just tighten up.
Excellent. Great. Unless we have any more questions, I think we've just gone over the hour mark, which is great. And thanks again, Dara, for this. Between today and last video, we've covered a whole heap of stuff in relation to satellites, which is something we do on a regular basis at Simplified Poker Academy. So if anybody watching this or the replay on YouTube, like I said, small pimpage, but go to simplifiedpoker.com/academy, or you'll see the button in the banner at the top in the menu that says Academy, and you can have a look. Basically, we have a group of like-minded, highly, skilled, but definitely recreational players is the main focus of the group. Ask more questions.
Not a good math
I'll try more.
Sorry, Matt, I'm out of here. Thanks everybody. Very good questions, and thanks to Dave as well. Dave basically had to double job today. Dave's normally just our tech guy, but he had to do that and act the barrier role of asking the recreational questions. So big thank you to Dave.
I get to go back and tell him it was easy. I don't know what the hell he's doing.
Exactly.
Pretending that it's hard work for him,
Yeah.
Just put up the hand replay and let you talk through it. Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much to anybody that attended live. Really appreciate it, because the questions do help people who come and watch the replays later on down the line. Like I said, if you want more from us, we'll do more of these kind of webinars, 1 hour webinars. Maybe not in the next month, because Irish Open will be in full swing, and Dara and Barry and myself are very, very busy just at the moment. Things are mental. If you want to waste money, you can bet on Dara at Paddy Power. The betting odds came out today. The perennial useless
terrible
book.
bet.
Terrible bet. You need to go back 12 months and put.
The only thing is, I do have 28 bullets. I have 28 bullets, so if I win on the 28th bullet, you still get paid.
Rob, no. Barry cannot grow a beard like this. I don't think he can.
No chance.
Excellent. Brilliant.
Okay, thanks,
thank you
guys.
very much, folks. We're going to end it there. And if you need anything from us in any way, shape, or form, simplifiedpoker.com. We have a contact form on the site, and all the details of all the products that we sell, training we sell, is on that site, simplifiedpoker.com.